Hey everyone, welcome to Maych TV. We're live because I fancied being live. I fancied a good old chat about the things going on around Liverpool Football Club at the moment, and what better time to do it than during an international break when we've got nothing else to distract us. So if there's misery, misery compounds. If there's happiness, happiness gets less, because that's just what the world is like. Right, yes, sorry, for all people who always kick off when I don't do this, even though it has no impact on a live video whatsoever. Hi, welcome, how's it going? As ever, you can interact with me in the comments. Alongside, I'll get to some of the good ones and probably some of the worst ones as well later on. But yeah, I want to discuss, obviously the transfer window has shut, slammed, closed, firmly, whatever. It has shut, and there's a bigger discussion, I think, around what Liverpool have done there, to be perfectly honest, or, let's be honest, not done, right? Yeah, I think you all know what I mean by that. It hasn't exactly been thrilling. Yeah, it hasn't exactly been a powder keg of massive activity for Liverpool in this window. And yeah, I get that. That's a thing, isn't it? You know, I think maybe we had an expectation that more was going to happen. More didn't happen, and now we're all disappointed. So yeah, there's that. So yeah. Look, I don't think there's a Liverpool fan on earth who didn't feel, on balance, looking at the Liverpool squad, that it wasn't missing something, or sorry, it wasn't necessarily in need of a few bits and pieces at the very minimum. So I've seen a lot of people have a massive back and forth, and you know, at extreme ends of the scales, like Liverpool needed to spend £100 million on a footballer, and then the more tempered end of that is, no, really what we wanted was a 30 or 40 million pound player, maybe midfielder or a forward who could just improve the overall squad. People weren't asking for first team players as such, they were asking for improvements on the guys around the fringes, and I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to want from the football club, right? And it certainly makes perfect sense to me. But was that the right approach? I guess we'll find out in the fullness of time, of course. But what I want to sort of concentrate on is that, because I think Liverpool needed one more player of the calibre of Diogo Jota to compete in the front for the front three places, and probably another one in that sort of calibre for the midfield as well, or someone in the calibre of like Naby Keita, but one in which you don't like fear for him being able to play more than 2 or 3 games back to back because of injuries. I don't think they were massive asks. You know, I'm not saying sat here going, why weren't Liverpool putting 150 million on the table for Kylian Mbappe? I mean, let's ask that question anyway, because that's a fun question. But no, I think the rational approach to this is, let's be honest, Liverpool would have been in a much stronger proposition if you had a guy with a senior quality footballer to add to the midfield mix who didn't come with lots and lots of injury concerns, because there's injury concerns around a lot of Liverpool's midfielders. Jordan Henderson's got injury concerns, Thiago's got injury concerns, Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain. There's 4 of you really, really senior lads, all of whom are no one in there is going to do what Gini Wijnaldum's just done, and that's play 50 games for Liverpool forever. So that's a big concern. And in terms of the front three, obviously we saw this against Chelsea. When Roberto Firmino comes out, Jota comes in, that's cool. But what happens next? And that's one of the areas that I really want to focus on in this, because I think this is where Liverpool have taken a gamble. And maybe where, you know, there's a different types of gamble. You can gamble on money, or you can gamble on the players that you've already got. And Liverpool have clearly decided to gamble on the players they've got. And I think there's 5 players this season that they've decided to take that gamble on, for better or for worse. I'm not here to judge that, I'm just here to talk it through. And I think those players are, gets list just to make sure I'm not saying this wrong, Takumi Minamino, they're on the thumbnail, 3 of them anyway, Divock Origi, Naby Keita, checks, Nico Williams, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Some of which, for the obvious reasons, as I've already mentioned, so there's fitness an issue. So I don't think there's some people who would question the quality of Oxlade-Chamberlain. I think his opportunity to nail down a permanent first team place at Liverpool might have passed him. He's 28 years old now, so he's well into his prime years, and he's had so many really bad injuries. I don't know if he's ever gonna usurp Jordan Henderson or Thiago this season and be like, I'm the first name on the team sheet. That's questionable. Naby Keita, I think it's slightly less questionable, in so much as Klopp plays him a lot. You know, even in big games still, and I know he gets hooked in a very big game last season, but I think we've seen a bit more that I think Klopp's happier to put Naby in midfield, because he does it more often than he does it to Oxlade-Chamberlain, certainly in the last couple of years. But there is, once again, massive question marks over Naby Keita, because look, he's a £50 million footballer who has, I think he's only ever played 10 consecutive games, or appeared in 10 consecutive games once, and that was after restart at the back end of the season when football was a little bit mad and a little bit weird, and they really nurtured him through that. So there's that, certainly. I think one that maybe, I think probably one of the hardest ones to fix is the Nico Williams one, who I think's fine. I think if he was at Liverpool in a way where Trent didn't exist, we'd all be very excited about this young prospect fullback that we've got. He's very good on the ball. He's decent defensively. He's Welsh international already. We'd be absolutely buzzing with that. But we're not, because we've got the best right back in the world and everyone looks rubbish by comparison, and that actually might harm his growth. He might not get to fulfill his potential at Liverpool, because how are you getting games ahead of Trent? Because Trent is so good. He isn't just an up-and-comer. He's an established central part of Liverpool and how they play. And as I say, rank him alongside all the greatest right backs in world football right now. There's a piece of paper between them all, and Trent is very much in that category. So what are the games? We've gone from what are the best games to use Trent into, how do you not use him, and what do you do if he's not there? And now the question is that too much of a steep drop off? But I'm not sure that's as fixable as the other two problems. So that's a gamble, but I think maybe with Milner still floating around there, that's kind of lower down the pecking order. I want to talk about the forwards though, in terms of the gamble there. And the biggest gamble, and the one that's maybe caused the most ire, is Takumi Minamino and Divock Origi. And the Divock one, I get that. I get that people aren't looking at Divock Origi's place in the Liverpool squad this season and sitting back and sighing contentedly. I think we had that 2 years ago, and he's been a lord of diminishing returns ever since. Now, does that mean he doesn't deserve a place in Liverpool's squad? Based on his performances and output last season, albeit like in a very, very small sample size, because he doesn't play much football at all. It's hard to justify that inclusion. However, for me anyway, if you've got Divock in your squad as a break glass option, you could do loads worse than have him as a break glass option, is what I'm saying. So when everyone is out and injured or struggling and all those kind of things, then if you have to call upon Divock, then there's far worse options, I think, than to call on Divock Origi in any given situation, because he can play centre forward and he can play wide. Is he ideal? Does he fit the system? No, but I also know that if you have to drop him in, he's capable. It's not like when you look in years gone by at Liverpool squads and you go, who's your break glass option? Well, it's a kid. It's normally a completely unproven kid. So like Cade Gordon's probably that in this squad. Got loads of talent, dead exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing him play more for Liverpool. But he's 16. If you get Salah and Firmino injured for a Champions League semi-final where you're 3 goals down this season, are you putting Cade Gordon in, or are you putting Divock Origi in? You're putting Divock Origi in, because as much as he's not thrilled in the last couple of years, he's got a proven track record of doing it when the chips are down, which I don't think is good enough to say he needs to play week in, week out, but that he's the bottom end. The one that's really interesting, and where Liverpool have put the gamble on in a calculated sense, but also one that I think has been harder to rationalise. I think we forget that Takumi Minamino exists at the time, and the amount of times I've listed Liverpool's purchases over the last 2-3 seasons, and every time, half an hour later, I go, and Taki. Completely forgot about Takumi Minamino. I think he's telling. Maybe it's just me, just that, I don't know. But the fact that he came in mid-season, did nothing. There was the pandemic. Then he had half a season when he was indifferent at best. Then he goes out on loan, so he's not even around. He's a bit of the forgotten man in Anfield. Now, he was really impressive in pre-season. He was impressive in the same way that I think Tsimikas was impressive. But also, Tsimikas, if Andy Robertson doesn't roll his ankle against Athletic Bilbao, Tsimikas doesn't start the season. Tsimikas has started the season and looked impressive, and now we're very much in a situation where, as we saw against Chelsea, you can bring Tsimikas on for Robertson because he can add a different dimension. I don't think that trust is there, and there's a big knowledge hole for us as Liverpool fans. Is Taki there to make the numbers up, or does Jurgen Klopp genuinely feel they're going to get a tune out of him? And a tune means goals, assists, because you need that, because Mané, Firmino, Salah and Jota all get goals and assists. They all come in and they have tangible impact on Liverpool. And this, what I think is really interesting about the Minamino gamble, as it were, is I don't know whether, in another world, with a team, would in 2 years ago or a year or so ago, was he just a plan to bring him in on the cheap? You pay 7.5, 8 million, whatever it was for him, and he'll move on. You'll sell him to a Bundesliga club for 15, or a Premier League club for 15 to 20, and you've just moved it on. You've had a decent little player who contributes in training. He adds something. He is an extra body. Or have we bought him with one eye to like, well, he is good enough, and he is going to have a place in this Liverpool side. He does bring qualities to change games, and it feels more like the former than the latter, because there's not enough for bank of evidence of him doing it in big games or senior games for Liverpool, really. But here's where I think it's interesting, is I think there's a lot of clamour for people just saying this summer, and a lot of people just saying, I didn't want £100 million forward, I just wanted to go out and buy a £30 million one, or just go and get someone who's better than Origi and someone who's better than Minamino. And I think that is a bigger gamble than keeping Minamino and keeping Origi. And that might sound like lunacy, but allow me a moment just to kind of justify that out. For a start, it's dead hard to buy squad players. And people think it's not. It's not. So it's really easy to buy squad players, because you can buy anyone. You can literally buy anyone. They could literally buy me and I would be a squad player. If they said, do you sign me a squad number? Well done, you're a squad player. But what I mean is particularly for Liverpool, of the quality required, they have to be able to come in, and I think they have to be able to impact games off the bench. I'm not saying that they need to go and play 15, 20 games. I'm not saying you need to go out and buy someone. I don't think anyone's asking, again, for Mbappe, who just comes in and that's it. That's Sadio Mane, you're now second choice on the left-hand side, say. Or Firmino, whatever. I think that the fact that we only paid £7 million for Takumi Minamino makes us not see it as such. But here's what happens when you gamble and buy players who aren't ready-made, and you don't spend the big bucks on someone. And I know this is offset, because you might say Liverpool only paid like 40 for Jota, and that seems like quite reasonable. It's a lot of money. That would have been Liverpool's transfer record a few years ago. £40 million is still a significant outlay. It is at best. That's the minimum you want to be paying, I think, for a squad player if you want to be a truly elite side. But what you've got with Minamino, and we've ended up with Divock Origi, they're the players. When you don't go and get someone who's better than your first 11 players already, you end up with you've got a greater chance of picking up a Minamino and an Origi, is what I'm driving at here. Is both of those players are all right, aren't they? Even if you might have turned against them, and you might not think they're worldies, or that you might not like them, really particularly like them, we can all admit that they can drop into isolated games of football and hold their own. They might not be the shining lights, not going to win man of the match, but they can all put decent performances. Like Takumi Minamino, Crystal Palace away last season when we demolished them, he's central to that. Divock Origi, even last season, comes on in the Champions League and gets a good assist. You know, that's stupid little modes, but they're capable. They are capable, if not necessarily players who improve what Liverpool are doing. And that's, for me, where the biggest gamble is. And I don't know what the answer to this, because the answer might have been Patson Daka. Say £23 million moves to Leicester, got a really good goal return in the Austrian league last season, and maybe he's it. Maybe he's the kind of profile there where we could have gone out and got him, and he would have been that. Now, he potentially might be more than that. He might be like a Jota who comes in and he goes beyond. But the problem is when you start to mess around, I think, with transfer fees below a certain level, and players come from a certain particular background. And again, Takumi Minamino was playing for Salzburg. He hadn't yet made that step up. There's a chance that he goes to Leipzig, and then you get him from Leipzig, and and he's had a chance to grow at a better standard, and then you pluck at him. But he might be a 40, 50, 60 million pound player by that point, and that might not be what you're looking for. For that amount of money, you're looking for someone who's definitely good enough. And so, just to sort of the Patson Daka stuff out as an example, you might end up with someone who can take that step up, but you might end up with just another lad who maybe doesn't sell, maybe he doesn't culturally fit in, maybe he doesn't understand the system, maybe his skill set isn't really suited, a la Minamino, a la Origi. Shaqiri was the same as this as well. And what does that do? And what does that stop you doing? Well, it's much harder to move a player on after a year, I think. And you might argue that, but the point is this: is that you've signed someone down, and you've got them on a new contract, and they're fresh, and you want to integrate them and all that. And you've also spent a chunky transfer budget as well. What if he doesn't fit? You're then left with another player you've got to move on. And now we're still left with Origi and Minamino, who, if they don't do anything this season, and I'm looking more at Minamino, I'm not expecting anything of Origi at this point. As I say, I think we've had all the juice we're going to get out of him, really. Hopefully not, but really. If you don't do this right, then you're committing wage budget, whatever, you're committing transfer funds. And are you arguably then also undercutting your ability to go and get someone better when you come round to January, or more likely next summer? And I think yes, because I think what Liverpool have done a lot of the time in the past is gone, okay, yeah, we haven't made a move for someone, but then they've gone and made the right move that followed on from that. I think that's fair. I think we can all see that, right? I think Virgil van Dijk being the obvious example for this. Liverpool desperately needed a centre-half, and they didn't go for one because they couldn't get Virgil van Dijk. And the options around there, and I always refer to it, was Stefan de Vrij. I couldn't tell you how his career's gone, but I can tell you it's not gone as well as Virgil van Dijk since that moment. Now, we could have picked him up for probably half of what we paid Van Dijk, but then we wouldn't have been able to buy Van Dijk. Another recent example of that is like last January. As recent as last January, Liverpool said, we're not buying any centre-halves. We're not buying any centre-halves. Oh, God, Joel Matip's injured. We've got no centre-halves. Let's go and get some centre-halves. So what did they do? They went out and they got Ben Davies and they got Ozan Kabak, and everyone went, what the hell are you doing? Kabak might be a bit of a masterstroke because he's definitely got some potential. They had a good old look of him. And Ben Davies, we now know he's not a human hologram, but he was clearly just someone there to make up the numbers. But what did that do? At the time, we all went, oh my God, what are you doing? Why didn't you go and get a first choice centre-half in January? Well, the answer was Liverpool were going to buy Ibrahima Konate. And that was their plan. He was their first choice centre-half. He's who they wanted. And they tried, and they couldn't get him for a fee that they could sort in the January, and they weren't prepared to let him go. Now, obviously, Leipzig were prepared to allow players to agree things and have clauses be triggered and what have you, which is how you end up with Upamecano agreeing to go to Bayern Munich as well. But Liverpool didn't commit funds to it in January, and that was a gamble. It was a huge gamble at the time because Liverpool needed to get back into top four, and the title was gone by that point, and Liverpool needed to get into it. So they gambled on a stopgap solution until they could get the player that they wanted. And I'm not saying this will happen, because look, let's be honest, when you say, oh, here's a positive thing that might be happening, this might be a really good reason what they're doing this, and it doesn't come off, people go, you dickhead, so you were wrong. And I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But there's enough track records there for Liverpool to say, I think Jurgen Klopp will look at Takumi Minamino and go, provided he's happy with him and how hard he works in training, which I think is important. And Divock Origi clearly works hard in training. You've got two lads who don't upset the apple cart, who make the levels of the players around them better. He always talks about this. It's not about the lads who just go on the pitch. It's about the entire club. It's about the entire squad. Liverpool is not just what we see on the pitch, it's every single day in training, and everyone contributes towards that success. That's the mantra, whether it's right or not, it's the mantra, and I think we all trust Jurgen Klopp in that regard, don't we? So that's where the transfer gamble is. And again, it stretches to Naby and it stretches to Ox. He's gambled on lads who know how he wants to play, who are integrated into the squad ecosystem, and maybe have a couple of associated issues, whether it's fitness or whether it's actually just an overriding top level of quality. He's trusted those rather than spending a mid-level amount of money on another footballer to effectively just rotate their place in the squad, and then instead gamble on that 6 months that it takes to bring a player up to speed. 6 months it took Oxlade-Chamberlain, 6 months it took Fabinho, 6 months it took Andy Robertson, 6 months it took Thiago Alcantara, and the rest. So I think that's where the gamble is, but I think it's a calculated gamble at best. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section underneath. This was meant to be live. I've clearly just left it as unlisted. Thank you to the one person who got the link unlisted, but it was public very briefly and has watched it. You're lovely. I will let people have their say. I'll be dealing with some of the comments and whatever. I just want to let you know, by the way, that we've released our Hendo 10 Years of Red documentary series at Physical Media. It's a DVD. Look at this. It's great. Oh, it's got like a thing inside. It's got like a Champions League poster. The cover turns into a poster. I just thought it was fun when I was making it, but that's there on redmenmerch.com. So if you want that as a gift season is approaching, so we've got that, and we've got the book as well, which I haven't got to hand, but it's Boss. So if you're starting to think towards Christmas, or if you just want to treat yourself because you're ace and life can be quite miserable, and sometimes it's best just to make yourself feel good, redmenmerch.com. I'll put a link in the description underneath. But there you go. What do you think the biggest transfer gambles are? Why? And can you see the positives towards them, or do you think it's all doom and gloom? Let's have a reasoned debate. No, we've got a no dickheads policy in the comments, so dickheads will be rooted out and we can have a nice old chat about the footy. Yes, thank you so much for joining me. That's been good. I feel that was quite cathartic. I'm feeling better. Hope you are too. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ra.